vagus nerve has two ganglia. One, the jugular ganglia in the jugular fossa. Two, the nodose ganglion about a centimeter below. Then you have the branches to the pharyngeal plexus, the superior laryngeal nerve, and then the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Now, chemodectomic cells can cluster anywhere, but they tend to love to cluster around these ganglia. If you get a tumor arising around the jugular ganglion in the jugular fossa, it's going to be a glomus jugulare. If you get a tumor arising from the paraganglionic cells around the nodose ganglion below the skull base, it's going to be a glomus phagali. Histologically, they're exactly the same tumor. Incidentally, so are carotid body tumors and those confined to the middle ear, glomus tympanicum. So histologically, they're the same. They vary by their location. And what's going to happen? It's clustered around the vagus nerve. So morphologically, it's going to be just the same as what I showed you for a vagal schwannoma, except we may be lucky and see flavoids. So on CT, not sure. This is a very densely enhancing thing, but some neurogenic tumors can look like that. But this was a glomus phagali. Here we can be more certain. We see vessels within the lesion. Here we see vessels within the lesion. Okay? The arteries up here, clear vessels within the lesion. Now I have to warn you, you can't expect to see flavoids on all paragangliomas. Why? Because there's two types. There's the macrofistulas, in which you will see the flow, and the microfistulas, in which the vessels are much smaller, the flow is slower, and they're not going to be picked up on CTA, MRA. The only way to do it is an invasive angiogram and use delayed films. So here's another one. Artery here, well delineated, flavoids within it, below the skull base, glomus phagali. Big tumor. Looks like something's in here. Non-homogeneous, the so-called salt and pepper appearance of the paragangliomas. Post-contrast, some areas looks like necrosis. You'd give the distance between here and the skull base. You'd give the maximal diameter. You saw the flavoids. It's a glomus phagali, and you've given the surgeon all they need. Carotid arteries, vein in the carotid sheath, carotid body tumor. Lyre deformity, because it sits right in the crotch of the bifurcation. Here's a small one. Now, you got to be careful. Once you find one glomus tumor, you're obligated to look throughout the entire neck, because in 10 to 15% of patients, they're going to have a second one, and if there's a family history, it's up to 30%. So you don't want to miss one once you find one. Okay. Bigger one. The arteries, carotid arteries, and the vein.